Okay, we are live.
All right, good morning and welcome to the House Environment Committee. We're slightly delayed in our start this morning due to technical challenges that we think we've overcome. We are going to start the morning on H276 with Susan Messino from Trinity College. Welcome.
Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to talk to you today.
Good morning. Go ahead.
Oh, okay, great. I may have known some of you before. I did speak to you about 4 years ago, and I just wanted to introduce myself. I'm a professor at Trinity College. My official title is Professor of Applied Science. My PhD is in biology, and I'm a joint appointment in neuroscience and psychology. So I've put a number of affiliations, particularly related to forests and the Vermont Climate Resilience and State Wildlands Act. And I've really been working at the intersection of health, climate, and ecology for about 10 years, and really working the intersection of neuroscience and ecology for longer than that. So if you could share the next slide, please, Annika. So what I want to really share with you today are just some top line messages on why wildlands are so important for individuals, for communities, and for science in general. So this is both a short-term and a long-term question that we need to grapple with deep clarity and deep courage for everyone. This is for everyone. Next slide. So my main training in biology and biomedical research has sort of winnowed my life down to understanding two irreducible realities: that we need nature and we need healthy brains for everything that we want to be and need, etc. And these are both incredibly complex, dynamic, resilient systems that we don't fully understand. And I think as a neuroscientist, it gives me a leg up in terms of understanding that this complexity is so important. And we need to continue to understand it, but we can't pretend that we understand everything now. Next slide. And ultimately, for those two things, our land and water is the foundation of everything that we need. And so we need to be careful with this as our common lifeline. I often call it our ecological lifelines. Next slide. And so the most important question that we are facing writ large right now is what we are doing, why, where, and how with our land and water. And my main take-home message today is that this is perhaps the most important question. And it's really not as complicated as we often get distracted into believing. And so I've just divided this question into three buckets. Where are we prioritizing natural processes? Where are we doing research? And what are the areas that we've delineated for our resource needs? And that could be farms, it could be areas for wood production, energy infrastructure, roads, houses, all of the things that we need. So on the next slide, so for nature, on this kind of three bucket schema, I substituted the term wildlands. And I know all of you may be familiar with the recent report, Wildlands in New England, Past, Present, and Future. I'm a co-author on that report, and it's a very detailed scholarly sort of review of the science and history of the landscape in New England and where we're at in terms of where are our wildlands. Next slide. And in the report, wildlands are defined similar to how they are defined in your legislation. So tracts of land where natural processes are intended to prevail with free will and minimal human intervention. I want to say as an aside, the recitations in the bill are really phenomenal, and all of them are backed by ample science in the US and around the world. And the recitations in the bill are also very interdisciplinary, and I appreciated that greatly. I want to say that these wildlands, they don't ban people, they don't ban, kind of common sense things that need to happen. They can still allow hunting, they can, depending on the rules for the wildlands, there's all kinds of things that can be allowed. And this intact natural areas is for everyone. Nature is our common lifeline. Next slide. So I sort of think about these natural, or wildland areas as this essential lifeline where the goal is to first do no harm to those natural processes. And there's overlap between wildlands and areas that we need for research. So there's so much we don't know, species we haven't identified, new medicines, all kinds of processes and connections. So this is where we need to collect data and set up baselines and research protocols. And research also overlaps with resources in terms of being where are we, how can we best use our resources, sort of a waste not, want not, maybe Yankee kind of attitude. So we need to really be thoughtful about what we're doing where and why. And there are overlap in these categories, but we can't pretend that nature can be a jack of all trades everywhere. And we need areas for natural processes that are not intended for resource production or highly manipulated habitats. Next slide. And so we often talk about nature-based solutions. And I think sometimes we overlook that nature-based solutions rely on observing and understanding nature and setting aside areas of nature to be those baselines and control groups going forward and to be the common lifeline for all of us. Next slide. So I just wanted to share with you some top line messages. This is the planetary boundary map that's been put out for over 15 years from the Stockholm Resilience Center. And this most recent planetary boundary map from 2023 shows that we are violating a number of boundaries. The green zone in the center is what's considered the safe range for various planetary boundaries. And the take-home message from this schematic is that the most violated boundaries, and this has been true since they started this documentation over 15 years ago, are, on the next slide, biological. So the biogeochemical flows, the genetic and functional integrity, and novel entities. So we are unsafely introducing novel entities into the environment with hormone disruption, GMOs, all kinds of manipulation of the natural systems that have their own regulatory and interconnected processes. So while we're often talking about climate change and climate issues related to greenhouse gases and particularly carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, the most serious planetary boundary violations we have are in fact biological. Next slide. And so I think a simple way to think about this is that life on Earth depends on life on Earth. There is a biotic regulation of the climate, which stabilizes the climate for life on Earth, which means for all of us. And there are most critical pieces, especially related to water. And I wanted to acknowledge your legislation and the how it gives so much importance to water. And what I've come to realize is this biotic regulation in the moving of water across land by areas with high functional integrity is critical to keeping life on land. Next slide, please. And that photo that I just showed is actually from Hartford, the North Branch of the Park River in Hartford. It's a very old forest, and some of the trees there predate the Revolutionary War. And these incredible little areas have no protection. And I'm really hoping that Vermont can be a leader in really acknowledging that we need areas for nature. You can't replace these things. And I want to make sure that you understand that this is not only not irresponsible, it is the only responsible thing to do. in that older areas have better resilience to drought, to temperature extremes. They have the genetic knowledge and interconnections to move water across land, and that genetic knowledge and complexity gives these systems the power to continue and help support all life, and reduce the extinction rate, which is now very high. Next slide, please. And so I've recently, I told you my PhD's in biology, I'm in neuroscience and psychology, but I really have been exploring this topic from a very interdisciplinary lens. And this is something that people are talking about internationally, all kinds of disciplines, physicists, mathematicians, climate scientists, ecologists, public health professionals. And this quote, I think, is very striking, that the biosphere is divided between natural ecosystems that work for stability and disturbed ecosystems that cannot do that work. We cannot leave every inch of the skin of our planet open to being plowed, cleared, logged, burned, sprayed. The integrity of the biota is the support system for life on Earth. It's like our common seed corn, if you're familiar with that term from farming. So this really needs to be handled with clarity and without conflicts of interest. Next slide. And one thing that I've come to appreciate is that every piece makes a difference. That little piece in Hartford makes a difference. These large unfragmented areas where the full range of species can move and migrate and survive also make a difference. The connections make a difference. Critical areas surrounding our water resources absolutely make a difference. And our current rules do not adequately protect these unconditionally precious pieces of our landscape. Next slide. So I just want to emphasize the international profile of this. So I was thrilled to be invited and one of the leaders of a conference held last year, international conference called Embracing Nature's Complexity: How to Communicate the Value of Water and Climate Regulating Ecosystems. And all different disciplines were represented. It was at the Technical University of Munich, the Institute for Advanced Science, and it was co-sponsored by the Biotic Pump Greening Group. Next slide. And it was particularly exciting that we opened the conference with New England, with the world premiere of a recent film by New England Forests called The Return of Old Growth Forests. And people were there from the Amazon, from the taiga, from Asia, from wilderness areas in Europe. And they could not believe the beauty and complexity and integrity of some of these areas in New England, and they just have inadequate protection. Next slide, please. And so, the other point that I want to make, besides the, classic climate and biodiversity comments, is our own health and our need for healthy brains and mental health, which is getting more and more acute. And nature is one of the most powerful and low-cost ways to promote mental health, reduce the risk of depression and anxiety, and promote the healing power of awe, which itself has increasing quantified science in terms of the power of awe to promote altruism and cooperation and all the things that we want in our communities and that we need to take care of each other and our kids. Next slide, please. The other thing that I want to mention is that all the medicines we've gotten and continue to find in nature, some of these medicines and molecules are found in specific specialized habitat niches. They're often found in older areas where the full web of life is expressed. And if you don't leave these areas, you won't have enough of that plant or microbe or whatever it is to be able to test that and find that medicine. Next slide, please. And one of the big things that we're all talking about is the microbiome and the importance of protecting the microbiome, both for our own health and for the health of the whole planet. There's so much that's just undiscovered. Next slide. So just to sort of bring this to a close, I really want to emphasize that wildlands and water is the common lifeline, the common solution to our challenges in health, ecology, and climate. And this is the first decision we need to make on the landscape. Where are we prioritizing nature? Next slide, please. And from my biomedical perspective, I always come from a, do no harm. And we need to identify these areas where our intent is to do the least harm. And I want to emphasize that thinking about these questions is something that everyone should be participating in. And most great scientists, they always end up looking to nature for solutions, which is why it's so important for everyone to be able to connect to our natural heritage and think of themselves as a scientist and a naturalist. Next slide, please. And so one point of do no harm is if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So next slide, please. And is also to really fully consider the side effects of what's happening. And you can't, of what we're doing. And unless you have control groups and baselines and reference conditions, you can't engage in science. Next slide, please. And so this Wendell Berry quote is, the summation of this quote is, we can't really know what we're doing unless we know what nature's doing. Next slide. And a quote that I often think of by Dr. Diana Beresford Kroger is, an intact forest is a mighty act of peace. And we've had so many areas where we've seen the power of nature to recover. And we need to give natural systems room to evolve and adapt. It's not optional, and it's for everyone. Next slide, please. So I'm happy to answer any questions. I'm sorry about my technical glitches this morning, but my final point is this is really something that's essential. It's not optional. And I hope that we can all get on the same page that there are these critically important areas. And thank you to Vermont for being a leader. And I'm happy to answer questions now or subsequently, and I've provided my email for that. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us and taking the time to make your thoughts so cogent, like just such a great presentation. I think I just wrote down, like, excellent job diagramming the knowledge, the nodes of knowledge along the path of understanding why nature matters to people, which is a link I think many of us inherently understand and know, but have a harder time explaining to others who haven't spent time thinking about it. So I really appreciate that you made this very clear this morning. Do members have questions? Representative Austin.
Yep. Thank you so much. This was extremely inspiring. My concern is, and I try to look at data and verified data, peer reviewed, replicated, published, but I think we're having a data war now in terms of people saying both sides are supported by data. And I don't, none of us have the time to go read the studies or look at the research. How would you address this in terms of getting data that's verified? That is the truth. I'm thinking if I look at .edu, I look at .mi, military, and I look at .com, those kind of guide me in terms of assuming that data on those sites are the truth, or as you said, as close to the truth as we can get.
Yeah. You can hear me, right? I didn't know if you just froze up. Is that the end of your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, yes. So I guess I would address that in several ways. And these were the principles by which we operated when I was the co-chair of the Science and Technology Working Group for the Governor's Council on Climate Change. Is, first of all, when the data is unsettled, and I'm not saying this is unsettled, but if you have a situation where data is, quote, unsettled, you should always go with the precautionary principle. So it's really important to be really careful and do the least harm, right? That's why I always start with my biomedical background in every kind of situation that I approach in my community, my science, etc. The second thing I would say is we don't have enough data to know if anything that we're doing is truly sustainable, which is another do no harm message. We just don't have, we don't know all the variables. We don't have, we just don't know. And the third thing that I would say is that it's also important to look at who's funding the science, or what's kind of the, that's why I wanted to make the point that we really need an interdisciplinary effort free of conflicts of interest. And what I've found is that there's always, in an effort to include all stakeholders, that interdisciplinary effort without conflicts of interest very, very rarely happens. And when I spoke last time to the legislature, I talked about multi-solving, which came out of Climate Interactive at MIT. And it talks about bringing all different disciplines together. And you don't have to eliminate stakeholders with conflicts of interest, but they can't dominate the discussion. So I think I'll just say right now, I'm a tenured professor. I definitely do not have my main, whatever fame is in neuroscience, actually. So this field, I'm working in it because it's so important. Not because I have any financial or cognitive or social conflicts of interest. That said, if you did engage in this process, you would find that wildlands absolutely have the highest carbon accumulation, have the highest biodiversity, have all the things that you say on your recitation. And I would go back to my burden of proof point. The burden of proof is on, if you have an area intended for natural processes, the burden of proof should be to prove that what you're doing is better than those natural processes. In a recent paper published by my co-author, Ed Faison, looked at wild forests and managed forest in the Northeast, matched groups based on Forest Service plots, and showed that in terms of all the things that we say we want, which is only not even scratching the surface of what's in the forest, is that there's more diversity of trees, large trees, all kinds of features in the forest that you would want are in these wild forests.
Thank you.
And any further questions? Thank you so much again for joining us.
Thank you so much.
All right, members, we have an opportunity with our legislative council having some availability right now. So we're going to shift gears and welcome Michael O'Grady and the updates to H230. And actually, so also, have you been involved with any amendments to H86 from the Ways and Means?
Yes, the Ways and Means Committee wanted to clarify. I can get it out for you.
Okay, great. Let's start with that and hear what they did, if you don't mind. That'd be great.
So You may remember in H86 that there was a fee report where the Secretary of Natural Resources was going to, if they were unable to contract with a third-party vendor to do the training, they were going to report to the General Assembly a recommended fee. And the Ways and Means Committee wanted to clarify some of that language. And specifically, they wanted to say that any fee charged to a commercial salt applicator by the state or a third-party vendor for certification under the program shall be approved by the General Assembly. So they were concerned that if A&R hired the third-party vendor and the third-party vendor started doing the training, that the third-party vendor would charge a fee that Ways and Means had not approved. So that's what this language was about. They want to approve the fee, whether or not it's the state doing the program or a third-party vendor doing the program.
I'm curious, it seems standard, like, sure, of course we would do that, but on the one hand, but on the other hand, is it? Is it what we usually do?
So the model or the similar program is the pesticide certification program. And for years that was just free. And now they're moving to remote training with third-party vendors. And that costs money, and Ways and Means required approval of that fee as well. So Agency of Ag tried to just say, oh, we're going to do it, and Ways and Means said, no, we have to approve that fee. So I could see how maybe Ways and Means would let that go, but they haven't. And so in my experience, a very similar program was subject to the same fee approval.
Yeah, okay, thank you for that. And then just explain how the timing of that might work. So this bill contemplates having this, yes. It's H86, but it's an amendment from Ways and Means. And have they voted their amendment out because it's now, the bill is en route or is in approps already? We sent it.
Yeah, I'm going in there this afternoon.
Okay, so just updating committee, and then Annika can maybe find the amendment to post. So contemplating, this bill contemplates 250,000, I think, to stand up the program with a contractor. And then once the program was up and going, a fee would be implemented to pay for it ongoing. The trainings as well as the staff person, or just the trainings would be covered by the fee
That'll be part of the fee recommendation.
in the report.
Yeah.
Okay.
And remember that the rules, the BMPs, are not due until July of 2026. The report is due in January 2026. So you're going to have time to react and respond.
Or the fees go into, sorry, the program goes into effect July 2026. Is that what you just said?
Well, the BMPs get it,
Right.
so they can't really implement the training until the BMPs are adopted.
The report will have time to respond to.
They'll have come back with the recommendation in January.
Do members have?
There was one other change. In the appropriation, it had set up to 250,000. They didn't like the up to. They wanted the up to gone.
And I remember we added the up to.
Yes, you did, and that was probably my fault.
Well, why didn't they like it?
They just didn't think it's how it was done.
Yeah. Okay.
I just emailed the committee the amendment.
Okay, great.
Everybody
Thank
take
you.
it.
Do members have, well, let's take a second to look at it.
Move it on to 230.
Well, I'm wondering if we're ready to take a straw poll on this or not.
Is it on the website?
Well, Ella just sent a link in your
I just
email.
emailed it. It's I'm sure.
Did you get here?
Did you get anything from, got an email?
And to me, these strike me as pretty straightforward and expected kind of changes from our Ways and Means Committee. And I think one thing we need to do is take a straw poll on amendments. And one thing I've learned over time is when you have the moment to take the straw poll, it's a good time to take it because you never know when you're going to find the next opportunity. Although we will need to find an opportunity if our Appropriations Committee makes any changes. So do members have, do members feel comfortable doing a straw poll on these changes now? Seen two yes nods, but no other responses yet. Representative Bartholomew.
Looking at this up to, I'm not sure what that actually,
They deleted it.
how does that fit into this whole picture?
It had appropriated, H86 as it came out of your committee had appropriated up to $250,000 for the purposes of contracting for administration of the program.
So the assumption is that 250, and if it's less than, it
Then
could be
there's
less,
budget adjustment. Yeah.
no problem.
Mhm.
So what they're just saying is that up to is not
It's
necessary.
not necessary.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other thoughts on this amendment or questions for O'Grady?
Just a question, how would it then come back to the assembly? Does that, I mean, if it's orders to, or the programs to be put in place?
So you don't see it in the Ways and Means Amendment because I only amended the second sentence. The first sentence of that section is a requirement that they report back to you in January of 2026.
This moves it to July fiscal year?
No, go through the timeline one more time, please.
Program, actually, basically, the bill goes into effect. I think it's July 1, 2025. But there's a directive that the agency adopt the PPPs by July of 2026. So they can't really implement training when they don't have the BMPs because the training and the certification is based on the BMPs. Prior to the rulemaking finalization, they are required to come back in January of 26 and report to you a fee, recommended fee that they would charge either by the state or by a third-party vendor to a salt applicator, commercial salt applicator for the certification. And whether or not that's going to pay for the program at that point. There is a sentence in the bill that says the program is to be based on the fee assigned or charged to an applicator. So that's what they're going to have to come back with.
Representative Norton?
And they're gonna be able to identify a fee without the BMPs being defined yet?
I think what they'll probably do is they'll reach out to a third-party vendor. I think they're going to get interest from third-party vendors because whether or not it's the Canadian vendors or the New Hampshire vendors, there are people that are doing this. And they're not going to turn down a couple $100,000 a year to do it. So then they'll be able to calculate based on an estimated number of applicants, what the fee will be.
Regardless of the BMPs?
Yes.
Back to the changes recommended in this amendment, which is what we're contemplating right now. Members have concerns or questions? Representative Lever?
So if we were to adopt, excuse me, a third-party vendor such as New Hampshire, we know from their presentation that fee was $400 for the primary trainer who could then train subsequent employees or vendors of the service. And I think they charge $25 each on that. How do we get to an annual, I think you said of 200,000?
Well, I think that's part of what the agency is gonna come back with. They're gonna have to come back with a fee for just the individual applicator taking the training, a fee for a master, which will probably be higher, maybe a fee for those that are trained by the master. And they're gonna have to do that accounting, that calculation based on the 2-year period. Because that's how long the commercial salt applicator certification lasts. It's not anything that they haven't done before. The agency does these fee calculate, well, you probably haven't seen them that often because fees have not changed in the relative recent past. But they have a process they go through. Expected number, estimated number of applicants, time, place, vendor contract. It's that they will give you an accounting of what their recommendation is.
Thank you.
They used to do a whole report, which was a bill, but the bill then came with an Excel spreadsheet that was then supported by like the basis for all of the changes. You don't see that anymore.
We don't, not for 8 years.
And one way I'm happy you don't see that anymore because I used to have to draft those fees. You know, not easy.
Now you're getting out of shape. All right, members, are folks comfortable with this amendment? Okay, so all those in favor of the amendment, please just raise your hands. All right, that's 10-01 straw poll that the reporter of the bill, who is Ella, will make note of. Moving on to H230 and the latest and greatest.
So I don't have my full file with me. I just have a copy of the new draft. So I won't be able to check back on my notes if there are any questions. But the first change is on page 9. This is in section 8, that language that amends the existing statute on transport, importation, possession, and stocking of wild animals. There had previously been a subsection F that prohibited a person from taking, collecting, possessing an amphibian or a reptile or parts thereof, dead or alive, for personal use unless authorized by rules of the commissioner. You thought that that was duplicative of both section 6 and potentially sub E above on page 9. So you struck that sub F. The remaining sections or subsections in section 8 are relettered. And that's the change in section 8.
And was the previous F in the original draft of this bill as introduced?
It had said a person is prohibited from taking, collecting, possessing an amphibian, a reptile or an amphibian or parts thereof, dead or alive, for personal use unless authorized by rules of the commissioner.
It had said that, yeah.
Pardon?
The original introduced bill said that.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Interesting. Yeah.
You did also on page 9, line 7. This was in response to a request by the department that it's a person shall not collect, possess, etc. for commercial purposes unless authorized by statute, the rules of the board, the rules of the commissioner, or permit from the commissioner. As you heard the general counsel of the department say yesterday, there are authorized commercial uses of animal parts, and there are some in statute. So that's I think that was a good change.
Okay, I think that's so really, if the original bill had that, they were contemplating a ban on the taking of reptiles and amphibians, essentially.
Yeah, yes. They just didn't like the way that you wanted to do it.
And we've actually softened it by having a grace period so that people who are potentially hunting now can engage in the rulemaking.
But they have to do rules
Yeah.
under your provision. They didn't necessarily need to do
They don't have
rules.
to do rules.
Right.
They don't have to do rules under our,
Well, right.
yes. Okay. Do members have questions or I think now,
There's one other, well, that's one other change. Page 16 in the effective dates. I had this as a note, but this might be something that you prefer not to do. But it was to make section 8 the same effective date as section 6. So the prohibition.
oh no.
That was only if we were keeping subsection F.
Yeah,
Only if you're keeping subsection F?
It's only gonna be for subsection F.
yeah,
Okay,
As
all right.
and quality of subsection F.
exactly. Yeah.
so that needs to be struck.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, members, questions for legislative council on this? And or discussion on it? As we have come to the latest draft.
If you would like, I can go make that change and send over a clean copy to Annika.
That'd be great. Perfect. Thank you. Thank you for joining us this morning. Representative Tagliavia.
Will the next iteration of the draft be also sent to council for Fish and Wildlife?
I can do that if you would like.
That, our next topic is up at 10. Do members have anything they want to discuss now? Or we take a brief break? Yeah, it's here from Secretary Moore at 10. Okay,
I'll be hearing from on this that we just talked about.
no,
Something different.
many other topics listed on the agenda.
All right.
We will take a brief break until 10 o'clock. Please be back promptly, secretary's time.